You're listening to the Hog Call with the great Mike White, Monday through Friday, noon to 2, on 1190 a.m., The Fan.
All right, we're back here with Kevin McPherson from Sporting Life, Arkansas. And, of course, Kevin, I know you got a little bit of a draft stock update, so to speak, on Daniel Gafford.
Well, Mike, it's been well documented that Gafford's stock was rising among NBA draft boards for the 2018 draft on the mock, when those mock drafts kind of updated each week throughout the college basketball season. He was someone that kind of went unnoticed and off the radar to begin the season, and then, as he proved himself, not only statistically, but just some of the things he brings to the floor with his combination of gifts. I mean, a guy that started to emerge, he never really was projected in the second round. He just kind of went from nowhere to say, hey, this guy's going to be a first rounder. A lot of mock drafts got to a point in March where they were projecting in the middle of the first round. And some folks even had him as a potential lottery pick. Sam Vecini, who covers the NBA and the NBA draft for The Athletic publication, felt like he had Dan slotted as a lottery pick at the bottom of the lottery, 13th or so, and felt like that's where he would have gone in the 18 draft. I did notice kind of late after the NCAA tournament there was a few mocks I saw where he slipped a little bit, kind of fell in the 20 to 25 range, but really good chance for him to get that first round guarantee, and Dan bypassed that. It's well documented that he ended up making the decision to come back to Arkansas, and in doing so, it really kind of broke a trend for a guy that has his projection, because ESPN did a story a few weeks ago about how record numbers as far as underclassmen declaring, record number overall of guys who've actually signed with agents and foregoing their senior season or future considerations for college. Didn't even play the what if game. Let me see what my draft status is, and then get back into college if it's not great. A lot of them went ahead and signed with agents. So in that same story, they talked about three different players who were really guys that were projected as first rounders who didn't even test the waters, and Gafford was one of those names. So we know that throughout this process, him deciding to not only come back to Arkansas but not even test the waters was kind of an eye opener. But some of these mock drafts that were kind of in line with thinking that Dan was going to go ahead and jump in for 18, it's taken some time now, but he's already reappeared. I looked at the update this week on NBADraft.net, and he's reappeared on their 2019 mock draft and coming in at number 9 overall. That's in the lottery. I noticed at one point he's been as high as number 6 for 2019, and certainly he can work his way up that list based on what he does this coming season at Arkansas. But it's really interesting to kind of follow this because, as soon as Gafford announced that he was coming back to Arkansas, within days we got news that Darius Hall and C.J. Jones were officially leaving the program. I mean, it was within a day or two. And so that kind of became the focal point of Razorback fans. We tend to, as fans anywhere, kind of focus on, glasses half empty instead of glasses half full. And with Gafford, that was such big news, and it just didn't get a lot of play because of the transfer announcements of C.J. Jones and Darius Hall. Darius Hall, by the way, now that we mentioned him, he signed with DePaul today. He committed to DePaul, only school he visited after announcing his transfer, but he signed today. But getting back to Gafford, when I go back and look at these per 40-minute numbers as a freshman, 21 points per game, 11 rebounds, 3.8 blocks. So numerically, he looks really good in terms of what he brought to the table as a freshman. But it's the intangible stuff. 6'11", we saw that he put on good weight, muscle weight. I always said when he was in high school, he had the kind of frame where he could add a lot of good weight without compromising his gifts, his athletic gifts, and we saw that. He's got the kind of shoulders. I think he can get even bigger, add more strength, but he's not just a high leaper. He's springy. Once, twice, 3 times in a row, he gets off the floor and affects plays, whether he's altering shots, blocking shots, getting tip-ins, put-back dunks, catching alley-oops. He can run the floor. We've seen that. He makes breathtaking cluster plays. He'll block a shot, get back in transition and block a shot at one end, then run and outrun everybody the other to make some spectacular play at the rim. He also showed that he was a clutch player. last season. Early on when Arkansas went out for the PK 80, the Phil Knight 80 Invitational in Portland, he had a big shot, basically an 18-footer from the baseline that doubled up Arkansas's 2-point lead to 4 with under a minute left, made it a 2-possession game, and had a tip in it to win the game against Oklahoma State and Fayetteville with Arkansas trailing by 1. He had a dunk that gave Arkansas its first lead of the game against Tennessee in a big, a nationally ranked team at home. Arkansas had to have that win early in the conference season and got that game to overtime. But he made big plays and showed that he was a clutch player. And then you look at some of the ESPN top 10 Sports Center type plays. He had several of those. So when you start looking at the arc of what Daniel Gafford did as a freshman, and he decides to come back, what is he going to do with that? How does he transition that? How does he use this next season to benefit him to not only maintain a lottery status for next season, but how does he move up in that? How does he slot himself and maybe inch up closer to that top 5? And that'll be interesting. I have some thoughts on that. And I leave it up to you to ask me any questions you might have about his development.
Well, Kevin, I know one thing is when you talk about draft stock, especially with big men in the NBA today, defensively, we know what he's capable of doing. But how's he working more on that outside, more the perimeter?
As good as Gafford was in some of the things I just talked about, obviously he's got some areas he needs to improve. We can talk about that. And then some of the things that I thought were positives as the season went on, things that I noticed that I also thought, showed that he was developing. One of the things that I really like about Gafford's game is, we know about the dunks and plays around the rim, but when he operated in space in the paint, he had a really nice touch, from 12 feet in, with little one-handed floaters. He'd sweep across the lane, a little baby hook. But it seemed like when he turned, even if he wasn't dunking, he finished really well. One of the things I noticed through high school was that he sometimes struggled finishing through contact if he wasn't dunking the ball. And I did see some encouragement there as well. There were several times where he got bodied and bumped and still found a way to get the ball in. You asked about his handling for a big facing up, and a lot of times there was kind of a double-edged sword. It was a little bit of a negative that he didn't always get as deep a post position as he would like. He plays kind of skinny. His base isn't very wide. He kind of stands up and doesn't bend his knees a lot to get position. So when you do that, sometimes you kind of get pushed and driven out of the lane. The problem for defenders was if he caught the ball in the lane, he would pivot, turn, and face, and he's so quick for a guy his size, and he has those long strides, and he's just a good enough handler. He could put the ball on the floor, get by a guy, and then he's at the rim. And so it's kind of you see some positives there, but you definitely want to see him do a better job of getting more physical inside. And I think when we saw him add weight and strength, a lot of that's upper body. He's going to have to get stronger in his base. He's going to have to learn to play, like I said, get lower to be a space eater and create angles that he wants and shield defenders. So those are things I think he needs to work on. Now, we know the modern NBA game, the bigs have to be able to step out and knock down shots. It's just the way the game's played now. They space the floor. I do like Gafford looks like he's got a nice natural touch. He doesn't get a lot of lift on his perimeter shots when he does face. He didn't take a lot of them, but he seemed to make a good number of the ones he took this past season. And the shot looks good. Like I said, he doesn't really get off the ground much, but when you're 6'11" with 7'2" plus wingspan, you don't necessarily have to jump really high when you're a big shooting. You just have to be efficient. So we'll see. We need to see more of that from him to make a determination. Is that something he can really add as a weapon? Because when you're doing that, now the defense has another problem they have to solve with a big man who's already versatile, right? But the way he runs the floor, he's not just a rim protector in a half court. He can get back down the floor and block shots in transition. And that's a commodity I know the NBA covets. They want big men who can do that. Teams do because of the way the game is played now. There's so much space. Even if you get in a secondary break, because of the contact rules, everything really favors the offensive players now. So a guy like Dan who can play so well in space and move so well and gets end-to-end so well, I think that, is one of his strengths. But when we start also talking about some other things he needs to work on, staying out of foul trouble, I thought he did a better job as the season progressed. He averaged 22.6 minutes per game. I think he needs to get closer to 28 to 30 this next season, for not only for Arkansas to have success, but really to, sort of add to his resume to kind of earn that lottery slot. say, look, I can stay on the floor, I can be productive, and play through foul problems. When he picked up early fouls, it really seemed to change what he brought to the floor. I know he had some good second halves, even after he only played limited minutes in the first half after getting two early fouls. But it seemed like later in the year, he'd get to halftime with one foul, and he was getting more minutes and was more effective that way. So, again, playing through foul problems early, not getting into foul trouble it seems to be something that he's going to have to work on. But I think all big men go through that, and I see him progressing in that. And I think as he gets stronger, too, he's going to be a much better rebounder. That's the biggest thing that really stood out to me after watching him in high school was how, he averaged nearly 16 points a game. And he went up against some really good athletic, tall players as a senior at different times and still dominated the glass. So I was surprised, his rebounding numbers were low for a player with his ability. I think a lot of that had to do with the strength of his hands and just that lower, talk about his lower body, he needs to add strength and get wider. I think he got pushed around a lot, and a lot of times when he was going up for the rebound, his timing wasn't off as much as the physicality of it, I think, caused him to miss some. And so I just think that he's going to end up being a guy that can give you a double-double and average a double-double. I really believe he can do that next season, and I think just adding strength and dealing with contact. But I think those are things he'll clean up and get better at. I guarantee he's working on stuff like that with the coaches. I thought Arkansas staff did a really good job of preparing him. I did not see him becoming as good as he was offensively coming out of high school as quickly as he did. I think a lot of credit needs to go to that staff. So if he progresses again and makes another leap this coming season, I don't see any reason why he cannot maintain a lottery status going into that 2019 draft.
Well, thanks once again, Kevin. Of course, we'll talk to you again on Monday. Guys, that was Kevin McPherson from Sporting Life, Arkansas, and we'll be right back after this commercial break. You're listening to The Hog Call here on 1190 AM The Fan.